Our series Earth 365 focuses on issues that affect our planet year-round. One of the most anticipated voices at the UN Climate Summit currently underway in Egypt doesn't belong to a politician or a scientist. It belongs to a 25-year-old Ugandan climate activist named Vanessa Nakate. Senior national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy recently caught up with her as the world prepared to focus attention on her home continent of Africa.
We don't need any more words. We need real action.
Vanessa Nakate benefits from the clarity of youth. The 25-year-old climate activist is tired of politicians saying a lot about the climate crisis and then doing too little about it.
The climate crisis is impacting people right now, and yet we are still, holding conferences, we are still holding summits, and yet people continue to suffer.
And so your point is stop talking, start doing.
Exactly.
Scientists warn that the impacts of climate change are accelerating, and efforts to curb planet-warming pollution are not nearly enough. Nakate, whose influential activism has landed her on the cover of Time magazine, now finds herself in some ways representing a continent of 1.4 billion people that is uniquely vulnerable.
We've seen some of the worst impacts of the climate crisis, across Africa. It is heartbreaking and frustrating because you didn't cause this crisis, but then you are suffering the impacts.
Africa accounts for the smallest share of planet-warming greenhouse gas emissions, a fraction of what China, the U.S., and the European Union emit. But climate change is punishing the African continent all the same. Rising sea levels, record flooding, and extreme heat waves and drought are intensifying famine and displacing entire communities.
Communities are struggling to find food to eat. They're struggling to find water because the entire place is dry.
We talk here a lot about, can we afford electric cars? Is there enough wind and solar? But what you're saying is this is much more acute life and death struggles.
There are people that are suffering severely, and they don't need an electric vehicle. They need food, they need water.
Nakate started a youth climate movement in her native Uganda in 2019 by protesting on the street. She says she was inspired by Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, who waged her own climate strike when she was just 15.
What is it, do you think, that young people understand about climate change that a lot of adults don't seem to?
I think young people understand the science of climate change and what is really happening. I think they understand the urgency of the problem. But it's important to know that young people can't do this alone. People say, the future is in your hands, but the people with the money to transform communities, they hold, the power to effect change.
In Africa, we've really had crazy floods.
In 2020, Nakate spoke truth to the powerful at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. She then posed for a photograph with 4 other young climate activists, all of them white, including Greta Thunberg. But when the Associated Press released the photo that was printed around the world, Nakate was cropped out.
That was one of the most, heartbreaking moments in my activism.
The world is so cruel.
In an emotional 10-minute video she posted to Twitter, Nakate said it wasn't just her face that was being erased.
Does that mean that I have no value as an African activist, or the people from Africa don't have any value at all?
One of the key things that I emphasized during the press conference was the need to listen to every voice. So it was heartbreaking for me to see that picture and not see myself there.
It certainly reinforced the message you were trying to deliver in a really unfortunate way.
And it really showed how those that are on the front lines are not on the front pages.
The AP later apologized, and Nakate has used that experience to fuel her fight for climate justice and make sure African faces and voices are seen and heard.
There are always moments of frustration.
When we met up at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, she told us she still remains hopeful the world will make progress on combating climate change.
I have to find a place of hope because it is in that hope that I get the strength to continue fighting.
In the meantime, she says the rich nations of the world, the so-called global north, need to make good on their promise to provide $100 billion a year to poorer countries like Uganda to help them adapt to climate change.
We need to move from promises to real action. A promise gives hope for a while, but when it's broken, it brings disappointment. We need real action, and real action is possible.
For CBS Mornings, I'm Ben Tracy in New York.
Well, thank you, Ben, for introducing many people to Vanessa. I first saw her on the cover of Time magazine, but as painful and insulting as that deliberate decision was to cut her out of the picture, it now has drawn more attention to her and what she's doing.
And it fueled her.
Yeah, and it
motivated her.
Yes, yes, yes. I like what Ben said. She benefits from the clarity of youth, and she's over conferences and summits. Now, people, let's do something.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.